You lied about Russian collusion for 3 years. You fabricated a presidential transcript in a federal hearing. You took money from a serial killer who preyed on young men. You leaked classified intelligence 125 times for book sales, and you became the 25th person in American history to be censured by Congress for dishonesty. And you think you're qualified to lecture me about the Constitution? What happened next wasn't a town hall. It was a demolition. Adam Schiff walked into the Phoenix Convention Center thinking he was orchestrating a viral moment, a brave confrontation in enemy territory that would rally his base and launch his Senate campaign. He thought he could stand up, deliver a rehearsed speech about tyranny, and walk away the hero of the resistance. He was catastrophically wrong. By the time 90 minutes had passed, Schiff wasn't a hero. He was a punchline. The man who had spent 8 years hunting Donald Trump watched his own career get dissected, fact-checked, and destroyed in front of 5,000 screaming witnesses. If you have waited years to see the prosecutor of the impeachment finally get cross-examined himself, this is your moment. What Donald Trump did that night will be studied as the moment the Russia hoax finally died, buried under a mountain of receipts. The Phoenix Convention Center was packed to the rafters. 5,000 people crammed into an arena built for 4, with another 1,000 outside watching on massive screens. The January air outside was crisp, but inside, the temperature had climbed into the 80s from body heat alone. MAGA hats dotted the crowd like a field of red poppies. American flags hung from every balcony. The energy was frantic, a mixture of a rock concert and a religious revival. Donald Trump stood center stage under hot white spotlights. He was in his element, jacket off, red tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He had been taking questions for 45 minutes and was clearly enjoying himself. The town hall format suited him perfectly. No moderators to cut him off, no time limits, just him and the people who loved him. "Next question," Trump said, pointing a finger into the sea of faces. "You in the... Is that a vintage Reagan shirt? Beautiful. Go ahead." The man in the Reagan shirt started to stand, but before he could speak, another figure rose 6 rows back. Even from the stage, Trump could see the difference. The expensive suit, the perfectly styled hair, the wire-rimmed glasses catching the stage lights. It was a face Trump knew better than almost anyone else's. "Oh boy," Trump said into the microphone, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, look who we have here. We have a special guest tonight." Adam Schiff stood up fully now, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced political precision. The CNN cameras, and of course CNN was there, tipped off in advance, swiveled violently to capture him. This was the moment Schiff had been waiting for. He had planted himself in the audience specifically for this. His staff had leaked it to friendly media. The New York Times had a reporter ready to write the story. Schiff confronts Trump at hostile town hall. "Mr. President," Schiff began, his voice carrying that familiar, solemn, prosecutorial tone he had perfected during 2 impeachment trials. "Or, should I say, Mr. Trump?" He paused, letting the correction hang in the air, a deliberate insult meant to wound. Trump didn't flinch. His smile just got wider. The crowd's reaction, however, was instantaneous. A wave of boos rolled through the arena like thunder, shaking the floorboards. Someone in the upper deck screamed, "Pencil neck!" And within seconds, the chant caught fire, spreading from the cheap seats to the front row. "Pencil neck! Pencil neck! Pencil neck!" Schiff raised his voice over the noise, trying to project authority. He had prepared for this. He had rehearsed it in the mirror. You have spent years lying to the American people, Schiff shouted, trying to be heard over the jeers. You lied about Russian collusion. You lied about Ukrainian corruption. You lied about election fraud. But we had the evidence. We always had the evidence. The boos intensified, turning into a wall of sound. Schiff pressed on, his chin jutting forward with righteous indignation. And history will remember, Schiff declared, looking straight at the camera, that I stood up to your tyranny when cowards in my own party wouldn't. Trump leaned casually against the podium, one hand resting on the wood, the other holding the microphone loose by his side. He looked completely relaxed. If anything, he looked entertained. It was the look of a predator who has just watched a wounded gazelle wander into his living room. "Are you done?" Trump asked, when Schiff finally paused for breath. The crowd laughed, the tension breaking instantly. Schiff's face flushed a light shade of pink. "Because that was quite a speech," Trump continued. "Really quite something. Very dramatic. You've been practicing that. You practiced that in the mirror this morning, didn't you?" "Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest leaker of them all?" The laughter grew louder. Schiff's jaw tightened. "You know what? Adam." "Can I call you Adam?" Trump asked, his voice dripping with mock affection. "We've known each other a long time. You spent 4 years investigating me, after all. That's like a marriage." Trump paused for the beat. "Except in a marriage, you're supposed to love each other. You just hated me." The audience roared. Trump straightened up from the podium, his voice taking on a different quality. Still friendly, but with a serrated edge underneath. "But I'm glad you're here tonight," Trump said. "I really am. Because you know what? I was just telling someone backstage. I'm not kidding. You can ask them. I said, I hope Shifty Schiff shows up tonight." He gestured at Schiff like a game show host revealing a new car. "And here you are, like a gift from heaven. Or maybe from that other place you'll be more familiar with." The crowd went wild. People were on their feet. The chant shifted now. "Shifty Schiff! Shifty Schiff!" Schiff's eyes darted to the CNN cameras, making sure they were capturing this. This was his viral clip. His chance to show the resistance that he was still fighting, still relevant. "Are you going to answer the question?" Schiff demanded, trying to regain control of the room. "Or are you just going to insult me?" Trump's smile transformed. It wasn't the showman's smile anymore. It was the smile of a man holding 4 aces. "Oh, I'm going to do both, Adam," Trump said softly. "Don't you worry. I'm going to answer every single thing you just said. In detail. With receipts. This is going to be fun." He walked away from the podium, microphone in hand, starting to pace the stage. The spotlight followed him. Every eye in the building was locked on his movements. "But first, let me say something," Trump said, stopping center stage. "Adam Schiff spent 8 years of his life trying to destroy me. 8 years. That's a long time to be obsessed with somebody. He investigated me. He impeached me. Twice. He went on every cable news show that would have him, and they all would have him, promising he had evidence that would take me down." Trump paused, letting that sink in. "And tonight, right here, right now, with 5,000 witnesses and millions watching online, we are going to review that evidence. All of it." He pointed a finger at Schiff. "We are going to go through every lie, every hoax, every fraud Adam Schiff perpetrated on the American people. And when we're done, everyone is going to understand exactly who you are and what you did to this country." Schiff opened his mouth to respond, but Trump raised his hand. "Ah, you had your turn," Trump snapped. You got your little speech. Now it's my turn. And believe me, folks." Trump looked at the audience, his eyes gleaming. "You're going to want to hear this." Trump walked to the very edge of the stage, looming over the section where Schiff stood. He wasn't threatening, physically, but his presence was overwhelming. He held the microphone like a gavel. "You know what really gets me, Adam?" Trump asked, his voice conversational now, almost friendly. "For 3 years, 3 long years, you went on television every single night. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and you said the same thing over and over and over." Trump mimicked holding a paper. "I've seen the evidence. Trump colluded with Russia. The walls are closing in." A woman in the front row shouted, "We remember." Trump nodded at her. "She remembers. Everyone remembers. How could we forget? You were on TV more than the weatherman." The crowd laughed, but Trump's expression grew serious. "But here is what I want you to understand, all of you," Trump said, turning to address the whole arena. "Do you know what Adam's lies did to regular families? I met a man in Iowa last year. Nice guy. Worked construction his whole life. And he told me his son, his own son, wouldn't talk to him for 2 years because of the Russia hoax." Trump's voice caught slightly. 2 years. Missed birthdays. Missed holidays. Father and son torn apart because Adam Schiff kept promising he had evidence that I was a Russian agent. He turned back to Schiff. "I met a woman in Pennsylvania whose marriage fell apart," Trump said. "Her husband believed you. She believed me. They couldn't get past it. Divorced after 23 years. The arena had gone quiet. This wasn't political theater anymore. This was personal. Thanksgiving dinners turned into screaming matches, Trump continued. Lifelong friends becoming enemies. Brothers not speaking to sisters. All because you kept promising that you had the smoking gun." He walked back to center stage. "Should we look at that evidence now, Adam?" Trump asked. "Should we review what you promised?" Without waiting for an answer, Trump pulled out his phone. "I had my team put together a little compilation," Trump said. "Just a few of your greatest hits." The massive arena screen lit up behind him. Clip: Adam Schiff on CNN, March 2017. "I have seen evidence that is more than circumstantial." Clip: Schiff on MSNBC, February 2018. "The evidence we have collected is damning." Clip: Schiff on ABC, January 2019. "I have seen direct evidence of collusion." The clips kept coming. Different shows, different dates, different ties, but always the same solemn face, always the same promise, always the lie. When the montage ended, the screen froze on Schiff's face, that serious, "trust me" expression he used when he was deceiving the country. 8 different shows, Trump narrated, over 3 years, always the same promise. "I've seen the evidence. The evidence is clear." Trump turned to face Schiff in the audience. "So, show us, Adam." Trump spread his arms wide. "We are all here. The cameras are rolling. Show us this evidence you've been talking about for 8 years. Schiff's face had gone from confident to flushed. He stammered, "That is taken completely out of context. The Mueller report clearly showed that there were contacts." "The Mueller report showed no collusion," Trump's voice boomed, cutting him off. "Your own guy, Adam," Trump said. "Robert Mueller, the man you said would save America, the man you called a hero. He spent 2 years investigating me. Unlimited budget, unlimited staff, unlimited power." Trump walked closer. And what did he find? He found no conspiracy, no coordination, no collusion. Trump paused for effect. "Even Mueller, who hated me. Everyone knows he hated me. Even he couldn't find what you promised. You know why?" Trump's voice dropped to a whisper. Because it never existed. You lied. A man in the audience shouted, "Tell him, Mr. President." But it's even worse than that, Trump said. Because you didn't just make a mistake. You didn't just get bad info. You knew you were lying. He gestured to someone off stage. An aide rushed up with a thick folder. Trump opened it. Do you know what John Durham found when he investigated the origins of this hoax? Trump asked. Durham, a real investigator, not a partisan hack. He spent years looking into how this started. Trump pulled out a document. And you know what he discovered? The FBI had zero evidence when they started investigating me. None. Zilch. Nada. They made it up. He looked up at the audience. The Durham report proves that the entire Russia investigation was based on lies funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign. The crowd erupted in boos at Hillary's name. But here is the important part, Adam, Trump said, his voice hardening. You had access to the classified briefings. You sat in those secure rooms as chairman of the Intelligence Committee. You saw the intelligence, or the complete lack of intelligence. You knew there was nothing, Trump accused. And then you walked out of those secure rooms, straight to the CNN cameras, and you lied. You told the American people you had seen evidence when you knew, for a fact, that the cupboard was bare. Schiff tried to speak. I was doing my constitutional duty. Your constitutional duty to lie? Trump's voice cut like a knife. Your constitutional duty to tear families apart? Your constitutional duty to waste $32 million of taxpayer money chasing a ghost? He turned to the audience. 32 million, folks. That's real money. That could have helped veterans. That could have secured our border. That could have fixed roads. Trump pulled out another document. But here is my favorite part, Trump said. Your own committee, the Intelligence Committee that you ran, interviewed 73 witnesses, 73 people, all under oath. He flipped through the pages, and not one of them, not a single person, provided evidence of collusion between my campaign and Russia. A woman in the audience gasped. Are you serious? Dead serious, Trump confirmed. I have the transcripts right here. Witness after witness. Obama officials, intelligence officials, your own staff. They all said the same thing. No, I haven't seen evidence of collusion. Trump looked back at Schiff. You sat through every single one of those testimonies, Adam. You heard them say, no evidence under oath. And then you walked out to the press conference 5 minutes later and said, the evidence is mounting. He held up a page from a transcript. March 2019, Trump cited, your own committee report. You admitted in the fine print, we have not seen direct evidence of conspiracy. Trump looked up. Those are your words, Adam. In the classified transcript, you thought would stay secret forever. He pulled out his phone again and played a clip. Schiff's voice rang out. The evidence of collusion continues to mount. The juxtaposition is devastating, Trump said. Inside the committee, under oath, no evidence. Outside to the cameras, evidence everywhere. That isn't a mistake, Trump said. That isn't a misunderstanding. That is deliberate fraud. You lied to Congress. You lied to the American people. You used your position of trust to perpetrate a hoax on this country. An older man in the audience stood up. Why isn't he in jail? Trump nodded. Great question, sir. Why isn't he in jail? Because we have a two-tiered justice system. Regular Americans go to prison for lying to Congress, but Adam Schiff, he gets a book deal. The crowd booed. But there were consequences, Trump said. Last year, your own colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, they finally had enough. And they did something that almost never happens in Congress. Trump smiled grimly. They censured you. He let the word hang there. We'll get to that later, Trump promised. But right now, I want everyone to look at Adam Schiff. Look at the man who promised you the smoking gun for 8 years. Where is it, Adam? Trump asked one last time. Where is the evidence? The silence from Schiff was absolute. 5,000 people held their breath. Schiff's mouth opened and closed. Due to the classified nature of the intelligence, Schiff stammered. Oh, now it's classified. Trump threw his hands up in exaggerated exasperation. For 8 years, you could talk about it on CNN every night. But now, right when I ask you to show your cards, now it's too secret to reveal. The crowd roared with laughter. You know what we are witnessing here, folks? Trump asked with a grin. We are watching a liar get caught in his lie in real time. Trump walked back to the podium, took a sip of water, completely casual. And that's just round one, he smiled. We are just getting started. Schiff was visibly rattled now, sweat glistening on his forehead under the unforgiving stage lights. He adjusted his tie, trying to summon that prosecutorial indignation that had served him so well on MSNBC. You want to talk about evidence? Schiff's voice cracked slightly before finding its rhythm. Let's talk about your perfect phone call. The one where you extorted the president of Ukraine. The one where you withheld military aid to force a foreign power to investigate your political rival. Trump's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. He didn't look angry. He looked delighted. Oh, please, Trump chuckled, turning to the crowd. Please go there. Adam, thank you. I have been praying you would bring up Ukraine. He walked to the edge of the stage, leaning forward conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a stage whisper. Can we dim the lights a little? I want to set the mood here. Because what we are about to see is a performance, a one-man show, starring Adam Schiff in How to Commit Fraud in Congress. The audience laughed as the house lights lowered, focusing all attention on the massive screens. Let me set the scene for everyone, Trump said, pacing the stage. September 26, 2019. Formal congressional hearing. The acting director of national intelligence is testifying. Cameras everywhere. C-SPAN broadcasting live to millions of people. Trump held up his hands, mimicking holding a piece of paper. And Chairman Adam Schiff has in his hands, right there on the desk, the actual complete transcript of my phone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine. Trump paused. The transcript had been released the day before. It was public. Anyone with an internet connection could read it. 5 pages. Not complicated. A pretty straightforward conversation between two presidents. He looked at Schiff. Does Adam read from the actual transcript? Does he quote my actual words? Trump shook his head slowly. No, he doesn't. Instead, he puts on his best actor voice. Trump's voice dropped into an exaggerated theatrical baritone and performs his own version. He makes up his own dialogue. He creates his own script. Someone in the audience shouted, "He's a fraud." He's worse than a fraud, Trump agreed. He's a bad actor, and we're going to prove it. The screen behind him lit up. C-SPAN footage. The congressional hearing. Adam Schiff at the witness table, looking stern and serious. I want everyone to watch this carefully, Trump said. This is your elected representative, in a formal hearing about impeaching a president. Watch what he does. The video played. Schiff's voice filled the arena. This is in sum and character what the president was trying to communicate. We've been very good to your country. Very good. No other country has done as much as we have. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. I hear what you want. I have a favor I want from you, though. And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent. Understand? Lots of it. On this and on that. Trump paused the video. The crowd was already booing, already angry. 7 times, Trump's voice cut through the noise. He says I told Zelensky this 7 times, and he says I told him to make up dirt. He walked to center stage. Okay, let's look at what I actually said. Let's compare. The screen split. On the left, Schiff's performance. On the right, the actual transcript text, highlighted in yellow. Count with me, everyone, Trump said. How many times did I actually mention Biden in the call? Let's go through it together. He read slowly from the actual transcript. There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. Trump looked up. That's it. That's 1 mention. Not 7. 1. He turned to Schiff. Can you count to 7, Adam? 1, 2, 3. It's not that hard. I learned it in kindergarten. The crowd laughed. But it gets better, Trump said. Watch the exact words side by side. Schiff's version. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent. Actual transcript. A lot of people want to find out about that. Notice something? Trump asked. I said, look into something people were already talking about. He says, I demanded they make up dirt. Those aren't even close to the same thing. He pulled out a printed copy of the transcript. I said, a lot of people want to find out. That is a request for an investigation into something that was already public. He says, make up dirt. That is fabrication. Trump's voice rose. He didn't just exaggerate. He didn't just add color. He completely invented words I never said. A reporter in the media section was furiously typing. Even the CNN cameraman looked uncomfortable. But here is my absolute favorite part, Trump said, his voice dripping with anticipation. Watch what happens when he gets caught. The video resumed. Republican Congressman Mike Turner's voice rang out. While the chairman was speaking, I actually had someone text me, is he just making this up? And yes, he was. The video showed Schiff's response, stammering slightly, looking flushed. My summary of the president's call was meant to be at least part in parody. Trump froze the video on Schiff's flustered face. Parody! Trump's voice boomed through the arena. After reading a completely fabricated version of a presidential phone call in a formal congressional hearing about impeachment, he says it was parody. Trump walked toward where Schiff sat. Imagine this, folks. Imagine if I went to Congress, read from one of Adam's speeches, but just made up whatever I wanted. Made it sound terrible. Made him look like a criminal. And then, when I got caught, I said, oh, it's just parody. Can't you take a joke? Trump shook his head. I'd be impeached before I could leave the building. But Adam calls it parody and expects everyone to laugh along. He pulled out a transcript of the hearing. But here is the thing about the parody defense, Adam. I went back and read your whole opening statement. Every word. Do you know how many times the word parody appears? Trump held up his hand in a 0. 0 times, not once. You never said you were doing parody. You never winked at the camera. You never gave any indication you were making it up. He read from the transcript. You said, this is the essence of what the president communicates. You said, this is in sum and character what the president was trying to communicate. You presented it as a summary, not a joke. Trump looked directly at Schiff. The word parody only came out after Mike Turner exposed you. That isn't parody, Adam. That is a lie you tried to walk back when you got caught. You didn't just lie to hurt me, Trump said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. You tried to overturn an election. You tried to undo the votes of 63 million Americans who elected me president. You committed fraud on the entire country using a fabricated transcript. He let that hang in the air for a long moment. The Government Accountability Office reviewed this afterwards, Trump said, pulling out another document. They are a nonpartisan agency. They looked at your summary and compared it to the actual call. And you know what they concluded? He read from the report. Quote, the chairman's characterization bore no relationship to the actual transcript. No relationship, Trump repeated. That is government speak for he made it up. Trump closed the document. So, let's be clear about what happened here. Adam Schiff fabricated a presidential phone call. He presented his fabrication as fact in a congressional hearing. He used it to impeach me. And when he got caught, he claimed it was parody, even though he never said that word until he was exposed. He looked at the audience. That isn't a mistake. That isn't an exaggeration. That is fraud. A man in a suit, clearly a Democrat based on his earlier reactions, stood up and quietly left his seat, heading for the exit. Then another. Trump noticed. They're leaving, Adam. Your own people. They can't defend this. They can't sit there and watch you get exposed as a fraud. He smiled grimly. But don't worry. We aren't done yet. Because what we are about to discuss next makes the Russia hoax and the Ukraine fraud look like child's play. Trump's voice got darker. Next, we are going to talk about who was funding you, who you took money from. And folks, he looked at the audience. This one is going to make you sick. Don't go anywhere. Round 3 involves 2 dead bodies and blood money. This is where it gets dark. The energy in the arena shifted instantly. The mocking laughter that had accompanied the parody segment evaporated. Trump's demeanor changed completely. The showmanship, the jokes, the light-hearted jabbing, it all drained away. What replaced it was something harder, colder, and infinitely more serious. I need everyone to pay attention now, Trump said quietly. His voice had lost all humor. What we are about to discuss is disturbing. It involves the deaths of 2 young men. It involves drugs. It involves predatory behavior. And it involves evil. Real evil. The arena went completely silent. Even the people who had been chanting "Lock him up" earlier sat still, sensing the gravity of the moment. And it involves Adam Schiff taking money from that evil and looking the other way. A photograph appeared on the massive screen. It showed a smiling man in his 60s, silver-haired, at what looked like an upscale political fundraiser. He was wearing an expensive suit, holding a wine glass. His name is Ed Buck, Trump said. Democratic mega-donor. Over the years, he gave more than $500,000 to Democratic candidates and causes. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom. Another photo appeared. Adam Schiff and Ed Buck standing together at a campaign event, both smiling for the camera. Adam Schiff, Trump said. Trump walked slowly across the stage, looking at the floor before raising his eyes to the crowd. Before I continue, I need to warn everyone watching. This story is going to upset you. It is going to make you angry. There are details that are hard to hear. But you need to know what kind of man your congressman took money from. He paused, letting people prepare themselves. In the summer of 2017, a mother lost her son, Trump said, his voice somber. His name was Gemel Moore. He was 26 years old, his whole life ahead of him, dreams, plans, a family that loved him. The screen showed a photo of Gemel Moore, young, handsome, smiling. They found him dead in Ed Buck's apartment, Trump said. A woman in the audience gasped. Others shifted uncomfortably. The police said it was a drug overdose, Trump continued. Methamphetamine. Trump's voice tightened with controlled anger. But Gemmill Moore didn't just accidentally overdose. He kept a diary. And in that diary, this is in the court record, I am not making this up, he wrote about Ed Buck. He wrote that Buck got him addicted to methamphetamine. He wrote about Buck injecting him with drugs against his will. He wrote, and I'm quoting now, Ed Buck is the one to thank for my addiction. The horror in the arena was palpable. A woman in the third row was openly crying. When Gemmill Moore died, Trump continued, activists in the community immediately said something was wrong. The LGBTQ community in Los Angeles, Black Lives Matter activists, they protested. They went to the police. They went to the district attorney. They begged for an investigation. He paused. You know what happened? Nothing. Trump's voice rose. A young man dies under suspicious circumstances. He has a diary saying he was being drugged against his will. Activists are protesting, demanding justice, and the politicians did nothing. Because Ed Buck had money, political money, your money, Adam. $2,700, Trump said. Ed Buck wrote you a check, and you cashed it. The crowd erupted in boos, but it wasn't the raucous booing of a rally. It was a low, angry rumble of disgust. Now, here is what really happened, Trump said. This young man died in July 2017. The activists started protesting in August. The story hit the news. The LA Times did an investigation. Everyone in California politics knew about it. He pulled out a timeline graphic on a large board. July 2017. Gemmill Moore dies. August 2017. Activists demand investigation. September 2017. You still have Buck's money. October 2017. LA. Times publishes story about Buck's pattern of drugging young men. November 2017. You still have the money. Trump walked down the timeline, his finger jabbing at each month. December. January. February. Trump looked directly at Schiff. You didn't return that money until March 2018. 8 months, Trump said. 8 months after Gemmill Moore died. 8 months while his mother buried her son and cried every night wondering why no one would investigate. 8 months while activists begged for justice. You kept the money, Trump accused. You kept the cash from a man who was preying on vulnerable young black men. Why? Did you need the $2,700 that bad, Adam? Trump asked. Was the money more important than the truth? Schiff sat frozen, his face pale. He looked like he might be sick. But here is the worst part, Trump said, his voice dropping. Because you waited. Because the system protected Ed Buck. Because politicians like you looked the other way. It happened again. Trump turned back to the screen. A new photo appeared. Another young man. Timothy Dean, Trump said. 55 years old, handsome, smiling, alive. January 2019, Trump said. 18 months after Gemmill Moore died, while Ed Buck was still free, while he was still donating to Democrats. They found Timothy Dean dead in Ed Buck's apartment, Trump said. The same apartment, the same circumstances. Drugs, overdose. Trump walked to the front of the stage, his eyes blazing. 2 bodies, Trump said, his voice shaking with rage. 2 young black men dead in the same apartment. Same man, same story. And for 8 months after the first one died, you sat on his money. That is blood money, Adam, Trump said. There is no other word for it. The silence in the Phoenix Convention Center was suffocating. The image of Timothy Dean, the second victim, remained on the massive screen, his smile a haunting contrast to the grim reality Trump was describing. Adam Schiff sat motionless, his face drained of color, avoiding eye contact with the surrounding crowd. "Two bodies," Trump repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "Two dead men. And it didn't stop there." Trump walked to the front of the stage. There was a third victim, a man named Dane Brown. In September 2019, Ed Buck lured him to that same apartment, the apartment of death. Trump pulled out a court transcript. Dane Brown testified at Ed Buck's trial. He said Buck injected him with methamphetamine every day for 5 weeks. 5 weeks of torture. He overdosed twice in 1 week. Trump looked up from the paper. "And do you know what Ed Buck did when Dane Brown was dying? When he was barely conscious, foaming at the mouth? He refused to call 911. The anger in the arena was palpable now. A collective gasp of horror rippled through the crowd. Dane Brown had to escape, Trump said. He had to stumble out of that apartment, barely able to stand, and make it to a gas station down the street to call for help himself. Because Ed Buck didn't want the police coming. He didn't want them finding the evidence of what he had been doing." Trump's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you understand what was happening? Ed Buck had a fetish. A sick, twisted fetish for injecting young black men with drugs until they were unconscious, and then assaulting them. The prosecutors proved it at trial. Multiple victims. A pattern going back years." He looked directly at Schiff. "And you took his money?" "Finally," Trump said, exhaling sharply. "Finally, after 2 deaths and a third near death, they arrested Ed Buck. September 2019. Federal charges. And in July 2021, a jury convicted him of 9 felonies. Trump held up the verdict form. 9 felonies. 2 counts of distribution of controlled substances resulting in death. That means the jury found that Ed Buck caused those young men to die. He killed them. He is serving 30 years in federal prison right now, Trump said. He will probably die there. Trump walked slowly toward where Schiff sat. "But you, Adam, you kept his money for 8 months after the first body was found. You sat on that cash while Gemel Moore's mother grieved, while activists begged for justice, while Ed Buck was free to kill Timothy Dean." Trump's voice rose. "When you cashed that check, did you know he was dangerous? Because the activists knew. The LA Times knew. Everyone in Los Angeles politics knew. People were talking about it, protesting about it. You spent years investigating me," Trump shouted. "You turned over every rock. You looked at every person I ever met. You had staff researching my associates, my donors, my friends." He pointed a finger at Schiff. "But you couldn't be bothered to check on Ed Buck, a man who was being protested in your own state? You took his money and asked no questions." Trump shook his head. "Or did you know and just not care? Because $2,700 was worth more to you than a young man's life?" A woman in the front row stood up, shaking with rage. "How do you live with yourself?" she screamed at Schiff. Security moved toward her, but Trump waved them off. "No, let her speak. She's right to be angry." The woman was crying now. "2 young men died, and you took money from their killer. What kind of person does that?" Schiff looked down at his lap. He had no answer. "This is who lectures us about morality," Trump said, his voice heavy with disgust. "This is who impeached a president. This is who claims to fight for justice and civil rights. He takes blood money from a man who targeted vulnerable young black men and pumped them full of drugs until they died." Trump walked back to center stage. "Ed Buck is in prison. Justice was served. Late, but served. Those families got some measure of closure." Trump looked at Schiff one last time. "But you got to keep your seat in Congress. You got to run for Senate. You walk free. You fundraise off being a hero of the resistance. His voice got very quiet. Seems like the wrong guy ended up behind bars. Trump took a long drink of water from the podium. The emotional weight of the Ed Buck segment hung in the air, but Trump was already pivoting. The sorrow was gone, replaced by a cold, clinical precision. He was moving from moral bankruptcy to national security betrayal. "You know what, Adam?" Trump said, his voice taking on a new, sharper edge. "You love talking about classified information, don't you? You were very concerned about my handling of documents. Very upset. Remember all those cable news appearances? Trump can't be trusted with America's secrets. Trump is a threat to national security." Schiff tried to summon some energy, straightening his jacket. "That's right. You stole classified documents. I was president," Trump boomed, cutting him off instantly. "Presidential Records Act. Look it up." The crowd laughed, but Trump didn't smile. "But since you want to talk about classified information," Trump said, "let's talk about your relationship with America's secrets." He started pacing again. "Because here is something interesting. For 4 years, while you were chairman of the Intelligence Committee, there was a pattern. And it was so obvious, so blatant, that even some of your fellow Democrats noticed." Trump gestured to the screen. A simple list appeared. March 6, 2017. Intelligence Committee Classified Briefing. March 7, 2017. Washington Post. New details in Russia investigation. April 10, 2017. Intelligence Committee Classified Briefing. April 11, 2017. New York Times. Trump campaign contacts revealed. May 15, 2017. Intelligence Committee Classified Briefing. May 16, 2017. CNN. Exclusive details on Flynn investigation. The list scrolled down. 15 examples. "Notice anything?" Trump asked the audience. Every single time. Every time your committee had a classified briefing about the Russia investigation, details appeared in the newspapers the next day. He turned to Schiff. "That isn't a coincidence, Adam. That is a strategy." A man in the audience shouted, "He's a leaker." "He's more than a leaker," Trump said. "He is a systematic leaker. During your time as chairman, there were 125 documented leaks of classified information from your committee." The number appeared on the screen in huge red letters. 125 leaks. "That isn't a few accidents," Trump continued. "That isn't staffers making mistakes. That is an operation, a media strategy." He pulled out what looked like phone records. "And we have the proof. Because investigative reporters, real journalists doing real work, they got your phone records. Legal records obtained through proper channels." Trump projected a redacted phone log onto the screen. Phone calls to Washington Post reporters on the same days as classified briefings, Trump noted. Calls to CNN producers within hours of closed-door testimony. "Long calls," Trump added. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to New York Times reporters right after highly classified sessions. Trump grinned, but it wasn't a friendly grin. "But my personal favorite. One time, you called a journalist from inside the Schiff." "The Schiff," Trump explained to the audience. "The sensitive compartmented information facility. The secure room where phones are banned. Where you can't even wear a Fitbit because it might be hacked." The audience gasped. "You couldn't even walk 50 feet to the hallway," Trump mocked. "You were so excited to leak classified information that you couldn't wait. You had to call them right there, right then, from inside the most secure room in Congress." He shook his head. The audacity, the absolute arrogance. Trump's expression hardened. "But this isn't funny. Because you weren't leaking parking tickets. You were leaking classified intelligence. Information about sources. about methods, about how we collect intelligence to protect America. He walked to the front of the stage. You know what happens to intelligence sources when they are compromised? They disappear. Sometimes they turn up in prison in foreign countries. Sometimes they turn up dead. The gravity of that statement hit the room like a physical force. You leaked information that endangered people's lives, Trump said, his voice shaking with controlled fury. Not because you saw corruption. Not because you were a whistleblower trying to protect the Constitution. You leaked to hurt your political enemies, to get on television, to sell books. He held up a copy of Schiff's book, Midnight in Washington. Very dramatic title, Trump scoffed. You made a lot of money on this, didn't you, Adam? And how did you market it? By going on TV and hinting at what you learned in classified briefings. By monetizing your access to America's most sensitive intelligence. He tossed the book aside dismissively. You turned national security into a bestseller. A veteran in the audience stood up. I served in Afghanistan. My buddies died collecting that intel. Trump pointed at him. This gentleman right here. He and his brothers in arms risked their lives collecting intelligence to keep America safe. And you, he pointed at Schiff. You sold that intelligence to reporters for TV time. You know what happens to normal people who leak classified information? They go to jail. Reality Winner leaked one document and got 5 years in federal prison. Edward Snowden is living in exile. Chelsea Manning went to prison. He paused for effect. But you leaked 125 times, and you got a book deal and a Senate seat. This is the two-tiered justice system in action, Trump said. Regular Americans go to prison for what Adam Schiff did as a hobby. Why? Because he was a Democrat. Because he was attacking Trump. Because the media protected him. He walked closer to where Schiff sat. You spent years calling me a threat to national security. But you were the one selling those secrets. You were the one putting sources at risk. Trump walked back to center stage. But your leaking days are over. You know why? He pulled out a memo. Because after you got censured for lying about the Russia hoax, Speaker McCarthy did something you probably didn't expect. He kicked you off the Intelligence Committee. Trump read from McCarthy's statement. Quote, Representative Schiff cannot be trusted with sensitive information. His pattern of leaks and lies makes him a security risk. He looked up. You went from chairman to banned. From running the committee to not even allowed in the briefing room. From having access to America's deepest secrets to being locked out like a security threat. Trump smiled grimly. Because that is what you are, Adam. A security threat. A man who sold America's intelligence for personal gain. Trump stood center stage, completely calm. He had delivered 4 rounds of systematic destruction. The evidence was overwhelming. The case was made. Now came the execution. Now, Adam, Trump said, his voice almost gentle, conversational, like they were old friends catching up. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. We talked about how you lied about Russia, how you fabricated a Ukraine transcript, how you took blood money from a serial killer, how you leaked classified information for personal gain. He paused, letting it all sink in. But last summer, something happened that summed up your entire career. Something that your children's children will read about in history books. Something that will be on your Wikipedia page forever. The screen showed a date, June 21st, 2023. Your own colleagues in Congress, Trump said. People who had worked with you for years. They finally had enough. Even some Democrats, people who had defended you through Russia, through Ukraine, through everything. Even they couldn't stomach it anymore. Trump walked slowly across the stage. And they did something that almost never happens in the United States Congress. Something so rare, so serious, that it has only happened 24 times in 247 years of American history. He let the anticipation build. They censured you. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Do you understand how rare that is? Trump asked the audience. 24 members of Congress censured in the entire history of the United States. 24 in nearly 2.5 centuries. He looked at Schiff. You're number 25. Congratulations, Adam. You made history. You are in the record books forever, just not the way you wanted. The crowd erupted in mocking applause. Schiff's face was ashen, his lips pressed into a thin white line. Let me paint the picture for everyone who wasn't watching, Trump said. The House floor, formal session, all the cameras, and Adam Schiff is standing in the well of the House, not to give a speech, not to receive an award, but to be formally condemned by his peers. Trump pulled out the official censure resolution. This is House Resolution 521, Trump said. Passed by the United States Congress. Official record. Permanent history. He opened it slowly, deliberately. Should I read what your colleagues said about you? I think I should. Trump cleared his throat dramatically. Quote, Representative Adam Schiff abused this trust by alleging he had evidence of collusion between President Trump's campaign and Russia. He paused, looking up at the audience. Wait for it. Which did not exist. The crowd cheered. Trump continued reading. Quote, For years, Representative Schiff occupied positions of extreme trust. He used these positions to mislead the American people and bring disrepute upon the House of Representatives. He closed the document with a snap. Disrepute, Trump repeated. That is a fancy congressional word for shame. Adam, your own colleagues formally declared that you brought shame to Congress. Trump gestured to the screen. Now, let me show you what happened next. Because this is amazing. This is political theater at its finest. The C-SPAN footage began to play. The House floor. The vote being called. And then, as the censure was announced, something unexpected happened. Democrats swarmed around Schiff. They were clapping, cheering, patting him on the back. It looked like a celebration. Trump paused the video. Look at this. They are clapping for him. He just got formally condemned for lying to America. And they are throwing him a party. He shook his head in amazement. You know why they did this? Because they knew. Everyone knew how humiliating this really was. So they tried to pretend it wasn't. They tried to spin it as courage, as resistance, as standing up to the evil Republicans. Trump showed headlines from friendly media. Schiff stands defiant as GOP censures him. Democrats rally around censured congressman. Schiff turns censure into badge of honor. Defiant? Trump laughed. The man just got formally condemned by the United States Congress for lying, and they called it defiant. They called it a badge of honor. He turned to the audience. Imagine if this happened to me. Imagine the headlines. Trump celebrates his censure. Trump proudly accepts congressional condemnation. They would say, I was delusional. But when Democrats do it, Trump said, it's brave. Trump walked to the edge of the stage. But a censure isn't a party, Adam. It is a stain. It means that 50 years from now, when students are studying the history of Congress, they are going to see your name on a very short list of people who disgraced their office. Benedict Arnold didn't get a censure, Trump noted, but you did. And you tried to fundraise off of it, Trump said, his voice filling with disgust. You sent out emails begging for money because MAGA Republicans were attacking you. You tried to monetize your own shame. But the stain doesn't wash off, Trump said. You can clap, you can cheer, you can pretend it's a badge of honor, but deep down, you know what it is. It is the verdict, Trump said. It is the final judgment of your career. You lied, you got caught, and you got punished. Trump took a moment to let the weight of the censure sink in. The screen behind him went black, leaving only the spotlight on the two men, the accuser and the accused. Now, Trump said, after all this, after the Russia lies, the Ukraine fraud, the Ed Buck money, the leaks, the censure, most people would go away. Most people would have the decency to retire, to go hide in a cabin somewhere. Trump smiled. But not Adam. Adam decides to run for Senate. Failing upward, Trump said. That is the Washington way. If you screw up bad enough, they give you a promotion. He showed polling numbers from California on the screen. California, Trump said. The bluest state in America. Deep blue. Nancy Pelosi country. Gavin Newsom country. You are a famous Democrat who spent years fighting Trump on TV. You should have dominated the primary, right? The numbers appeared. California Democratic primary results. Adam Schiff, 33%. Katie Porter, 32%. Barbara Lee, 31%. 33%, Trump exclaimed. In a three-way race against two other Democrats, you barely beat Katie Porter. A second-term Congresswoman almost took you down. That isn't a victory lap, Adam, Trump said. That is a warning sign. And in the general election, Trump continued, you won by 20 points. Sounds good, right? Except Biden won California by 30 points in 2020. You underperformed Biden in your own state by 10 points, Trump noted. That is hard to do. You have to really work to be less popular than Joe Biden in California. Trump let the audience laugh. Even California Democrats were embarrassed by you, Trump said. Even in the most liberal state in the country, you dragged down the ticket. Why? Because they know who you are. Trump walked to the front of the stage. And now you are in the Senate. But let me tell you what I hear. Trump lowered his voice to a gossip's whisper. I talk to people in the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, and you know what they tell me? They tell me you are radioactive. 3 weeks ago, Trump narrated, Adam Schiff sat alone in the Senate cafeteria. His phone, which used to be constantly buzzing with donor calls and media requests, silent. No one sat at his table, Trump said. Staffers walked past without making eye contact. A fellow Democratic senator came into the cafeteria, saw Schiff, and immediately turned around and left. He was the political equivalent of a leper, Trump said. Why? Trump asked. Because nobody wants to be near the guy who got censured. Nobody wants to be near the guy who took money from Ed Buck. Nobody wants to be near the guy who lied about Russia. You are toxic, Adam, Trump said. Your own party tolerates you because they have to, but they don't respect you. Your fundraising emails? Trump asked. I heard about those. They used to bring in millions. Now? Pennies? The donors have moved on. The resistance has new heroes. You are yesterday's news. Trump pointed to the screen again. This time, it showed Schiff's Wikipedia page. Look at this, Trump said, updated within hours of this town hall. The censure was now in the first paragraph. The Ed Buck donations had their own section. The Ukraine parody incident was detailed with the side-by-side comparison. The word controversial appeared 11 times. This is your legacy, Trump said. Not the impeachment manager, not the hero. You are the guy who lied so much that Congress had to formally tell you to shut up. You thought you could run for Senate and escape your record, Trump said. But you can't run from the truth. The truth has legs. And tonight, the truth caught up with you. Trump walked back to the center of the stage. You are a senator now, Adam. Congratulations. But you are a senator with no power, no respect, and no future. You are just a ghost haunting the halls, Trump said, a reminder of a hoax that failed. You didn't fail upward, Trump concluded. You just fell and landed in a different chair. Donald Trump stood center stage, bathed in the white spotlight, the Phoenix Convention Center vibrating with a strange, heavy energy. He wasn't pacing anymore. He wasn't smiling. He looked like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. He took a sip of water, placed the glass down with a deliberate clink, and turned his body fully toward Adam Schiff. Now, Trump said, his voice booming without shouting, filling every corner of the room. We have looked at the specific crimes. We have looked at the Russia lies. We have looked at the fake transcript. We have looked at the blood money. We have looked at the leaks. But I want to put it all together, Trump said. I want to look at the total picture. Because when you step back, when you look at the whole career of Adam Schiff, it is a monument to failure. Trump raised his hand, fingers splayed. Let's count them down, Trump said. The 5 points of failure. The legacy of Adam Schiff. He curled his thumb in. 1. Number 1, the Russia hoax. You spent 3 years terrorizing this country with a lie, Trump said. You told mothers and fathers that their president was a traitor. You tore families apart at the dinner table. You wasted $32 million of taxpayer money chasing a ghost. You promised evidence you never had. You lied to the American people about the most serious charge imaginable. He curled his index finger. 2. Number 2, the Ukraine fraud. You sat in a committee chair on national television and you fabricated a conversation between 2 world leaders. You invented words. You acted out a play. You tried to use your own fiction to overturn a free and fair election. You committed fraud on the Constitution. And when you got caught, you called it a joke. He curled his middle finger. 3. Number 3, the blood money. You took cash from Ed Buck, a man who preyed on young black men, a man who injected them with poison until they died. You kept that money for 8 months while bodies were being carried out of his apartment. You valued $20,700 more than you valued justice for Gemmill Moore and Timothy Dean. The crowd was silent, the weight of the accusations pressing down on them. He curled his ring finger. 4. Number 4, the leaks. You betrayed your oath of office 125 times. You took America's most sensitive secrets, secrets that good men and women risked their lives to collect, and you traded them for positive coverage in the New York Times. You endangered national security to sell a book. You treated the Intelligence Committee like your own personal PR firm. He held up his pinky finger, the last one standing. Number 5, the shame. You became the 25th person in 247 years to be censured by the United States Congress. Your own colleagues formally condemned you. They kicked you off the Intelligence Committee. They declared you a security risk. They wrote into the history books that you are a liar. Trump made a fist. 5 strikes, Trump said. In baseball, you only get 3. But in Washington, apparently, you get to keep failing until you run for Senate. Trump walked right up to the edge of the stage, looming over Schiff. The cameras zoomed in tight, capturing the stark contrast. The towering, energized former president versus the pale, diminished congressman. You didn't just fail, Adam, Trump said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that the microphone picked up perfectly. You failed spectacularly. You failed publicly. You failed historically. You turned yourself into a case study of everything that is wrong with Washington, Trump continued. You are the embodiment of the swamp. You are the arrogance, the dishonesty, the elitism, and the incompetence, all wrapped up in one expensive suit. He leaned in slightly. You are not the resistance, Trump said. You are not a hero. You are a cautionary tale. You came here tonight to embarrass me, Trump said. To get your viral moment. To remind people you still exist. To show the donors you are still fighting. He straightened up, looking down his nose at Schiff. But all you did was remind everyone why you are finished. Why you are a disgrace. Why even your own party is embarrassed by you. You want to know the truth, Adam? Trump asked. You didn't lose tonight. You lost a long time ago. You lost the moment you decided that your hatred of me was more important than the truth. You lost the moment you decided that destroying Donald Trump was more important than serving the American people. You sacrificed your reputation. You sacrificed your integrity. You sacrificed your dignity. Trump spread his hands. And for what? I am still standing. The movement is stronger than ever. And you? Trump shook his head with genuine pity. You are just a punchline on late-night TV. Trump turned his back on Schiff. It was the ultimate dismissal. He walked back to the podium, picked up his water, and took a drink. You didn't just lose, Adam, Trump said over his shoulder. You were destroyed, and you did it to yourself. The arena erupted. 5,000 people were on their feet. The chant started low and built to a roar. USA! 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 Adam Schiff sat frozen in his seat. He was silent. He was pale. His hands were visibly shaking in his lap. The people who had been sitting near him had all moved away, leaving him isolated in a sea of red hats. A Democrat in an expensive suit walked past Schiff's row without making eye contact, looking at the floor to avoid association. Then another. The exodus was complete. Trump stood at the podium, smiling that dangerous smile one last time. Thank you all for coming tonight, he said. That was fun. The town hall ended, but the destruction of Adam Schiff was just beginning. As the lights in the Phoenix Convention Center came up, Schiff tried to make a quick exit. He stood up, buttoning his jacket with trembling fingers, and turned toward the side door. But the press was waiting. Reporters who had been tipped off by Schiff's own team, expecting a triumphant story about him confronting Trump, now smelled blood in the water. They swarmed him. Congressman, a reporter from Politico shouted, do you have a response to the timeline of the Ed Buck donations? Congressman, yelled someone from Fox News, where is the evidence you promised? Trump asked you 5 times. Do you have it? Mr. Schiff, a CNN reporter asked, looking pained, do you regret the parody defense? Do you feel you have brought shame to the House? Schiff kept his head down, pushing through the scrum. I stand by my record, he muttered, his voice barely audible. This was a political stunt. A stunt? A reporter shouted back. But the censure resolution is real. The Durham report is real. Are those stunts? Schiff didn't answer. He rushed out the emergency exit, flanked by his security detail, looking like a fugitive fleeing a crime scene. But the cameras caught everything. His pale face, his shaking hands, his inability to answer a single question. Those images went viral before Schiff even got to his car. The internet explodes. Schiff show trended #1 worldwide within 15 minutes. Where's the evidence was #2. Ed Buck Blood Money was #3. The YouTube uploads from dozens of angles, thousands of phones recording the massacre live, started racking up views. 5 million in the first hour, 20 million by morning, 50 million by the end of the week. The memes were merciless. A video of Schiff stammering, "It was parody," remixed with the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song. Graphics showing the 5 points of failure hand counting. Where's the evidence? Becoming the universal reply to any claim Schiff made on Twitter. The media spin fails. CNN tried to salvage it. Their immediate headline read, "Trump levels baseless attacks on Schiff at hostile town hall." But the panel discussion fell apart. "Look," one panelist said, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm no fan of Trump. I think he's dangerous. But those were facts he was citing. The censure happened. It's in the record. The Ed Buck timeline is accurate. The leaks are documented." Another panelist sighed. Schiff walked into a buzzsaw. He thought he was going to get a soundbite, and instead, he got cross-examined. It was a disaster. On Fox News, the celebration was unrestrained. "I have never seen anything like that," Sean Hannity said, grinning. "That wasn't a debate. That wasn't a confrontation. That was a public execution." The political fallout. Within 48 hours, the consequences became real. Senate Democrats, who had tentatively welcomed Schiff's candidacy, started distancing themselves. Joint appearances were quietly canceled. Committee assignments were placed under review. Fundraising events were postponed indefinitely. A prominent California Democrat donor released a statement anonymously to Vanity Fair. "We can't sell this guy anymore. He's damaged goods. The Ed Buck thing, hearing it laid out like that, it's nauseating. I'm out." Schiff's fundraising emails, which used to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in hours, now brought in pittances. The resistance base had moved on. They didn't want a loser. They didn't want a punching bag. The isolation. 3 weeks later, the image Trump described became reality. Adam Schiff walked into the Senate cafeteria. He got his food. He looked for a table. Senators were sitting in groups, laughing, talking strategy. As Schiff approached, the conversation died. Eyes averted. People checked their phones. He sat alone. He checked his Twitter mentions. He shouldn't have. "Where's the evidence, Adam? Did you check on Ed Buck today?" Parody senator. He was radioactive, untouchable, the political equivalent of a leper. Trump's final word. Somewhere in Florida, on a green golf course under the sun, Donald Trump sat in a cart, looking at his phone. He typed out a message on Truth Social. "Pencil neck got destroyed in Phoenix. Maybe the worst beating in the history of politics. He asked for it. Where's the evidence, Adam? The Russia hoax is dead. The Ukraine hoax is dead. Schiff is a total loser. Sad." The post got 2 million likes in an hour. Trump put the phone away, pulled out his driver, and smashed a ball down the center of the fairway. He laughed. Adam Schiff had spent 8 years trying to destroy Donald Trump. He had used every weapon available: investigations, impeachments, media leaks, fabrications. He had positioned himself as the hero who would save America. And in one night, in one town hall, it all came crashing down. Trump didn't just win. Schiff lost everything. The Russia hoax, dead and buried. The Ukraine parody, exposed as fraud. The censure, a permanent mark of shame. The blood money, an unforgivable stain. Adam Schiff, the man who tried to destroy a king, became the cautionary tale instead. The warning to future politicians: come at the king, you best not miss. Adam Schiff came. He missed. And he lost everything.